Today we're talking about Kundalini. All right, so there is a lot of buzz out there about Kundalini, and I channeled this information last year how a lot of people are going to have overactive Kundalini because there's so many practices that are out there. If you go to a retreat, there's a lot of holotropic breath work practices, Kundalini practices, meditations, dark room that really start to awaken your Kundalini. So, is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? That is up for debate. As I progress in my own spirituality, in my own awakening, I'm kind of leaning towards maybe it's not for everybody. And there is a reason why some of this information is kind of kept quiet. Even finding a book on how to awaken Kundalini or Tantra yoga is not exactly easy. It's a little hush hush, it's not easily available, and I think that's for a reason. We'll get into that, but first we're going to talk about what Kundalini is and what it feels like. Kundalini is an ancient theory that comes from yogic and tantric traditions, and it's believed that it's a dormant energy that lives in the base of our spine, and when we awaken, the energy lifts and moves through all of your chakras, and eventually you kind of get turned on, and it turns on a lot of your psychic gifts, insights. It opens you up. You become expansive, your awareness rises, and you can become your fully awakened self, which sounds really appealing. But the problem is when we do awaken, it's not all glamorous. It is hard work, which I don't think anybody really highlights at all or talks about. They just kind of talk about the gifts that they gain. But with that comes, at least for me personally, and a lot of the people that I know and I work with, and I'm in a community of psychics and mediums, and I have been for years, and I see it, we all talk about it, we all go through this, is the self, the intensity of it is so extreme, it can disrupt your everyday life. So, I'm going to talk about how it feels. So at first, Kundalini feels good. It could feel orgasmic. You can kind of feel it running through your body. You almost especially when you're allowing it, you're in a rhythm. Something is moving within you. It's kind of a circular motion. Your body might even start moving like this. And it just sort of takes over. And it feels fine. But over time, Kundalini, when you start to awaken your more and more, or in practice more and more, the Kundalini stays longer, and it can kind of start to disrupt your life. So things like sleep become disrupted because you're so open, and when you start becoming open, especially if you start doing mediumship work or any type of psychic work or exploring psychic realm or anything, or communicating, channeling, anything along those nature, even if you don't start doing that, you could start seeing, hearing, feeling things too that kind of lead you down that path. But anyways, your sensitivity is so heightened and your awareness is so aware, almost too aware, that it highly disrupts your nervous system. Highly. When this happens, it affects your sleep. Number one, affects your ability to focus. You might go days without sleeping. When that happens, it just intensifies. It just snowballs. So it's really hard to reel it in and pull back. And that's why a lot of people, once that starts happening and that you kind of just lose it, you're very on the brink of losing it mentally, psychologically. It affects your psyche. I mean, personally, I've woken up and not knowing where I was. I didn't know who I was at all. And it can be very, very scary. I've had many scary moments during my awakening. Luckily, I've had support from a spiritual community, not necessarily just spiritual, but like specifically mediumship and psychic community that can really help support you through this. And then also I have my yoga to fall back on. Thank God. Yoga is a nervous system regulation practice, which I highly recommend for anybody who is doing this work. You must have some type of practice to fall back on, or you are screwed. You just will be taken away. So, and you might, anyways, I don't want to say this to add fear, but I want everyone to know that there is a consequence, and there is, it's not easy work, and it's not necessarily glamorous either. So it should be taken seriously. Anyways, with that being said, some ways to help calm Kundalini and sort of just come back to your baseline is to put spirituality to the side. Forget it. Let go of the channeling. Whatever you are doing to heighten this, let go of it, which is hard. Grounding practices, yoga. And I'm not talking about Kundalini yoga or any type of like exerting. However, sometimes when you're in this state, your energy is so high that maybe running or something along those natures would be good. Or sometimes I do enjoy like a faster aerobic type workout vinyasa class, but then also sometimes I need like a nervous system. Like I haven't slept for 4 days. My nervous system needs support right now. I need to calm down. So I mean, that hopefully that's in the past. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. But like, you're kind of, when you're tuning, let's just say, when you start doing this work, and it's not glamorous. Like physical 3D world things, cleaning your house, just normal stuff, normal relationship, normal conversation, not, coming back to this reality, if you will. Gardening, anything of that. Your work, focus on your work, whatever you do for your work. Sage, clear out anything that might have like attracted in. And kind of just like ask to please close and close any portals, close your third eye so that you can really just rest. So you really need to come back to your baseline before you decide to step back into this work. And so those are just some of my tips and what's worked for me. No phone before bed, relaxing teas to help sleep, even meditations, sleep meditations, themes of trust and safety, like mantra, I am safe, I am safe. So that is all really good stuff. What else? So with that being said, I want to highlight some of my thoughts about the spiritual community and just like specifically Joe Dispenza and anybody who kind of leads these breathwork ceremonies or retreats or whatever they're doing. I think there's a lot, and I want to stay, like, I'm not here to bash anyone. What I want to say is all these people have, I think, good intentions. From what I've read, specifically Joe Dispenza is a chiropractor. So that is his doctor title, which I think he uses to kind of put on this facade that like this is evidence-based, like this is scientific, you know, so it's kind of like his marketing. But what he's doing is he's taking yogic, tantra, kundalini, energy healing practices that people do and currently do, and he's kind of rebranding it as this scientific model. And he's using his own unique words to describe practices and things that have already existed forever. And this is not new. This happens all the time. And I think this is something else I channeled, that we're just starting to become more aware of this, and that like we see through this. And especially as you practice, if you've been in this world for long enough, like you start to want to pay dues to what's been here forever. You know, it's not him bringing this through. He's just taking it and remarketing it, and using his doctor title as an authority to kind of like say like, hey, this is real. Which maybe this is great. Like maybe this is the evolution that, you know, needs to happen, and just to get people more like using modern lingo, if you will. I mean, that's up for debate. That's fair. But what is not is when we're having people do this work that aren't really experienced in the psychic. They're not psychic or mediums. They're just not really like, or they're not channelers. They're not really familiar with how that work works, like, and how those realms work, and like the boundaries that are needed to work in this realm, and what people might go through when their Kundalini is awakened, and especially more sensitive people, and what happens when you leave the retreat. I actually personally know somebody who went on one of his retreats, and she was starting to have the lingering effects, like, you know, and in what it Kundalini lingers. And it's like, if they're not aware of what's happening, and like you kind of start to mentally like lose it a little, paranoia creeps in, fear, a lot of this stuff. I just think it's tied to not really knowing what is happening. Your body starts to feel fear and like, you know, like extreme like threat. And so the nervous system changes, your nervous system is changing, you're more sensitive to things. We see movies that are scary, so we kind of associate with that, especially when we're opening, you know, we kind of fall back to these fear models that we've been programmed to, like every scary movie we've ever watched, that the unseen world is unsafe and scary. So it's just kind of like, now I have to clear those old traumas. But anyways, I've personally known somebody who was experiencing this, and I ran into her, we had to talk, and it kind of helped her through this. And it really opened my eyes to the possibility of like how many people this happens to. And like I'm telling, when you leave that Joe Dispenza retreat, are you able to call him and email him personally like, hey, I need help? No, he's works with, you go to one of his retreats, there's thousands of people in there. He's not helping you. So I don't know. I just don't know if like this mass awakening is needed. I think it's very I think it's for money, mostly for money, centered work. The more people I can help, the more money I get. If you really want to help people, then you would be helping them one-on-one or smaller groups, community centered, so that you can really touch them. You know, we're cleaning up after this dude. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on that. I do think that since he had a spinal injury, supposedly he healed himself, that I think his work is rooted in something like very genuine. But I do think it's a little fishy that why do chiropractors tend to gear towards this work? Just curious, why? Why are chiropractors like drawn to energy work, or I don't know, they have Reiki, or they're like doing I don't know, just these practices that I don't know, do they belong in a chiropractor office? It's interesting to me. Anyways, I'm just not like really familiar with chiropractors. I've never been to one. It just seems like the chiropractors, like the body and the spine. Why are you doing energy work? And you're not really like a psychic medium either. I don't know. Anyways, what he's teaching is a lot of true, though. It's rooted in things, it's ancient knowledge, it's nothing new. And so it's like, it's just the debate on like, should we be awakening the masses in this setting? Because personally, I've been lucky enough to have kind of like a slow progression to my awakening, and then really ramping up when I started working psychically. But also, like, I'm working cyclically on and off for years. It's not something that like just, and it did wide open, and I had to like learn how to close it and have boundaries, and that's for another video. But there are things that, you know, come along that you have to learn. So, and I know he's not teaching that portion of it. So it's just kind of, I guess, a hot topic. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what you think of that. And this goes along with breathwork ceremonies. I've been to them. The more I do them, the more like I don't like them. I really enjoy my baseline and being there in a more neutral state where I'm like just centered. I don't feel the need to like have a big release. And maybe I've just moved through so much of that in my past that I'm not there anymore. However, a lot of people love it and have good experiences. So I believe that there's a place for it. I just think there's a danger there. And I think the person facilitating should have either recommendations for deeper support, ongoing support if there is a Kundalini awakening, and or knowledge of it. And also have a lot more have a relationship with yoga and understanding in a history and a consistent practice that they can kind of weave into the breathwork work that they are teaching, so that they have also teaching a foundational practice that people can fall back on. Those are my thoughts. Anyways, curious to hear yours. Have a wonderful day.